My kidney donation to my son was seconds away when my grandson revealed a secret. I'm Sadie, a 59-year-old retired nurse from Portland. I never thought my willingness to donate a kidney to my son Daniel would lead to the most shocking moment of my life. Daniel, 38, was dying from sudden kidney failure, and I didn't hesitate to offer mine. My grandson Noah, just 9 years old, has always been my little sunshine. My daughter-in-law Jessica, however, was a different story. When Daniel got sick, she didn't ask. She demanded, "It's your obligation as his mother." Before I tell you what happened in that operating room, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to make a difficult family decision. Family has always been everything to me. I've been a widow for 12 years now. My husband, Thomas, passed away after a heart attack. Before that, I raised Daniel, mostly on my own after divorcing his father. When Daniel was just 5, his father remarried and moved to another state, barely staying in touch. It wasn't easy raising a child alone while working as a nurse, but we managed. Daniel was always a smart boy, though sensitive. He had asthma as a child, so I spent many nights watching over him while he struggled to breathe. Those experiences made us close, perhaps too close according to some. But when you are all someone has, the bond becomes unbreakable. Daniel met Jessica during his junior year of college. He was studying computer science and she was in business administration. The first time he brought her home, I noticed her ambition immediately. She had everything planned out: the career, the house, the timeline for children. Daniel seemed enchanted by her confidence and drive, qualities he sometimes lacked. Their wedding 8 years ago was beautiful, though I noticed small things: how she corrected his speech, made decisions without consulting him, laughed a bit too loudly when he made minor mistakes. But I kept my concerns to myself. Every mother has to learn to step back, right? When Noah was born, my heart expanded in ways I never thought possible. Being a grandmother was a joy I hadn't expected. I'd visit them weekly, bringing homemade food and small gifts for Noah. Daniel had secured a good position as a software engineer, and Jessica had decided to become a full-time mother, though she called herself a domestic CEO. Over the years, I watched Jessica transform. The ambitious student became someone obsessed with appearances and status. Their house in the suburbs grew larger, their cars more expensive. Sunday dinners at their home became a showcase of Jessica's perfect life. Though I couldn't help but notice the strain around Daniel's eyes, how little Jessica actually spoke to him, rather than about him. The atmosphere at those dinners was always tense. Jessica would critique everything from Daniel's table manners to his work stories. "No one wants to hear about computer code, Daniel," she'd say with a tight smile. Noah would glance nervously between his parents, and I'd try to change the subject. Last year, I started noticing changes in Daniel. He was losing weight, and dark circles appeared under his eyes. When I asked if he was sleeping, Jessica would answer for him, "He's just working too hard. Tell him to take a vacation." But Daniel's smile never reached his eyes anymore. 6 months ago, my phone rang at 2 a.m. It was Daniel, his voice shaking. "Mom, I'm in the emergency room. My kidneys are failing." I rushed to the hospital in my pajamas, finding my son hooked up to machines, his face gray with pain and fear. The doctors explained he had sudden severe kidney failure and would need a transplant as soon as possible. Without one, he would be on dialysis indefinitely, with a significantly reduced quality of life. "I'll get tested," I said immediately, taking his hand. "If I'm a match, you can have one of mine?" Daniel's eyes filled with tears. "Mom, you're 59. That's a major surgery. Age is just a number," I told him, trying to sound braver than I felt. That's when Jessica, who had been on her phone in the corner of the room, looked up. "Of course she'll do it," she said matter-of-factly. "She's your mother. It's what mothers do." I felt a chill at her tone, not grateful, not concerned, but entitled, as if my kidney was already their property. But I pushed the thought away. My son needed me, and nothing else mattered. The testing process was grueling. I underwent numerous blood tests, tissue typing, and medical evaluations. At each appointment, the doctors reminded me that donors my age faced higher risks. Are you sure about this? They'd ask, and I'd nod, thinking of Daniel's ashen face. Jessica accompanied me to several appointments, not for emotional support, but seemingly to ensure I didn't back out. Daniel's condition is worsening. She'd remind me unnecessarily. The transplant list is years long. When the transplant coordinator called with the results, I was shocked to learn I was a viable match despite my age. It's unusual, but your health is excellent for your age bracket, she explained. I called Daniel with the news, my heart pounding with mixed emotions, relief that I could help him, fear of the surgery. He was quiet for a moment before saying, "Mom, you don't have to do this." Before I could respond, I heard Jessica take the phone. "Of course she's doing it," she said firmly. "It's great news, we'll schedule it as soon as possible." Then away from the phone, but still audible, "Don't make her feel like she has a choice when she doesn't." My stomach tightened, but I dismissed my unease. Jessica was just stressed, I reasoned. Anyone would be, with their spouse's life at stake. During the weeks of additional testing, I spent more time with Noah. Jessica was often busy with transplant logistics, leaving him in my care when Daniel had dialysis appointments. Noah and I would draw pictures or play board games in the hospital waiting room. Sometimes he'd say things that struck me as odd. "Mom is always on her phone," he'd whisper. "She talks different when Dad isn't there." "Different how, sweetie?" I asked once. He shrugged, happier, laughing. I attributed his comments to a child's simple observations. Jessica did seem constantly attached to her phone, but most people were these days. The pre-surgery consultation was sobering. The transplant surgeon didn't sugarcoat the risks. "For a donor your age, Mrs. Harper, there's increased risk of complications, bleeding, infection, pneumonia, heart problems, even stroke." Daniel, who insisted on attending, despite Jessica's objections, turned pale. "This is too much to ask," he said. "It's not too much," I insisted. "I'd rather take these risks than watch you suffer." Jessica, who had been texting throughout the consultation, finally looked up. "The doctor said she's healthy enough," she pointed out impatiently. "And it's what mothers do. My mother would do the same for me." The surgeon looked uncomfortable. "It's entirely Mrs. Harper's decision," he emphasized. "No one should pressure a potential donor." Later, as we walked to the parking lot, I overheard Jessica on the phone. "The bills are piling up, but we'll manage. Yes, after the surgery, things will get better." I know. She hung up quickly when she noticed me approaching. Something about her tone had been off, not worried so much as calculating. But again I pushed my concerns aside. My son needed me. As the surgery date approached, Noah became increasingly clingy and anxious. The night before my final pre-surgical testing, he crawled into my lap during my visit. "Grandma, I don't want you to get cut open," he said, tears in his eyes. "I'll be okay, sweetheart," I promised, though my own fear was mounting. Sometimes we do hard things for the people we love. He looked at me solemnly. Would Dad do it for Mom? The question startled me. Of course he would. Would Mom do it for Dad? I hesitated just a second too long, and Noah nodded as if I'd confirmed something he already suspected. The final dinner at Daniel's house before the surgery was tense. Daniel barely touched his food, while Jessica seemed unusually animated, constantly checking her phone and smiling at notifications. "Who keeps texting you?" Daniel asked at one point. "Just work friends wishing us luck," she said, quickly putting her phone face down. When it was time for Noah's bedtime, I offered to read him a story, while Jessica cleared the dishes and Daniel rested. As I tucked Noah in, he whispered, "Mommy has a special friend." "What do you mean, sweetie?" I asked. "She talks to him when Daddy's asleep. She says he's just a friend from work, but they talk about grown-up stuff." His little face was troubled. "Is Daddy going to be okay after your kidney fixes him?" "I hope so," I said, though a knot was forming in my stomach. "Try not to worry. Grown-ups have complicated problems sometimes. I think Mommy doesn't want Daddy to get better." He said so softly I barely heard him. I dismissed his words as a child's misunderstanding of adult relationships. Children often sensed tension, but interpreted it through their limited understanding. Still, I slept poorly that night in the guest room Jessica had coldly prepared for me. No extra pillows or blankets, just bare essentials, despite knowing I'd be recovering there after the surgery. The next morning, Noah found me alone in the kitchen and tugged me to his room. I want to show you something, he whispered, looking around to make sure we were alone. From under his bed, he pulled out a drawing. It showed a woman with long blonde hair, like Jessica's, standing next to a tall man who wasn't Daniel. Who's this? I asked gently. That's Uncle Brian. He's not really my uncle. Mommy says he's a special friend and I'm not supposed to tell anyone when he comes over, when Daddy's at the hospital. My hands trembled as I looked at the childish drawing. This could all be innocent, a family friend helping out during a crisis. But combined with Jessica's secretive phone habits and Noah's concerns, Noah has Uncle Brian been here a lot? Noah nodded. He brings mommy presents, and they whisper a lot. His voice dropped even lower. One time, I heard them say Daddy was never going to bother them again. A cold feeling washed over me. Before I could ask more questions, we heard Jessica calling for Noah. He quickly stuffed the drawing back under his bed, his eyes wide with fear. That afternoon, Jessica's sister, Megan, visited supposedly to help prepare the house for Daniel's recovery after the transplant. I'd always felt Megan was more genuine than Jessica, though she clearly idolized her older sister. As I packed my overnight bag for the hospital, I overheard them talking in the kitchen. So, after it's all over, what's the plan? Megan asked. Brian and I will need to wait a respectful amount of time, Jessica replied quietly. At least a year before we can be public. And the life insurance will cover all the debts. And then some. Daniel increased his coverage last year. 2 million. My blood ran cold. I stepped backward, knocking into a hallway table. The conversation abruptly stopped. When I entered the kitchen, both women were smiling too brightly, Jessica quickly changing the subject to post-surgery meal preparations. That night, I barely slept. Was I misinterpreting innocent conversations? Was my fear of surgery making me paranoid? I prayed for guidance, for clarity. By morning, I'd convinced myself I was overreacting. Jessica might be having an emotional affair, troubling, but not sinister. The life insurance discussion could have been practical planning, given Daniel's health crisis. The morning of the surgery, Jessica was unusually attentive to Daniel, adjusting his hospital gown, bringing him water, kissing his forehead. Yet, she barely acknowledged me, the person about to undergo major surgery for her husband. Daniel, however, gripped my hand before they took me to pre-op. Mom, I'll never be able to thank you enough. He said, tears in his eyes. You don't need to thank me, I told him. That's what family does. As they wheeled me away, I saw Jessica's face. For just a moment, her mask slipped, and the expression I saw wasn't gratitude or concern, it was impatience. In the pre-op room, nurses inserted IVs and attached monitors. The anesthesiologist explained the procedure as I signed final consent forms with shaking hands. All the while, a sense of dread grew within me that had nothing to do with surgical fears. Just before they wheeled me into the operating room, Daniel was allowed a brief visit. His eyes were red, his gratitude palpable and genuine. After he left, Jessica appeared in the doorway. We'll take good care of your kidney, she said with a strange smile. Don't worry about anything. As they prepared to take me to the operating room, I heard a commotion in the hallway. Noah's voice, high and panicked. I need to see Grandma, please. Despite hospital rules, he must have slipped away from whoever was watching him. As they wheeled me into the operating room, I caught a glimpse of Noah being held back by a nurse, his small backpack clutched to his chest, tears streaming down his face. The operating room was blindingly bright, the surgical team efficient, as they transferred me to the operating table. The anesthesiologist placed an oxygen mask over my face, explaining they would start the medication soon. I felt tears sliding down my temples as I stared up at the harsh lights. Was I doing the right thing? Something felt terribly wrong. We're just waiting for final clearance from the transplant coordinator, the surgeon told me. Try to relax. Suddenly, there was a commotion at the door. Noah had somehow eluded hospital security and burst into the operating room, his backpack still clutched to his chest. You can't be in here, young man, a nurse exclaimed, moving to intercept him. Grandma, wait, Noah cried out, dodging around the nurse. I have to tell you something. You can't give Daddy your kidney. The surgical team froze in confusion. The anesthesiologist lifted the mask from my face. Noah, sweetie, what are you doing? I asked, trying to sound calm, despite my racing heart. I have to show you something before they cut you open. He sobbed, unzipping his backpack with trembling hands. He pulled out his tablet, the one Jessica had given him for educational games. I took screenshots because I knew no one would believe me. A nurse tried to lead him away, but the surgeon, perhaps sensing the desperation in the boy's voice, held up a hand. Let's hear what he has to say. Noah rushed to my side, his tablet clutched in his small hands. Mom doesn't know I figured out her password, he said, his voice shaking. I saw her texting all the time and I was worried, so I looked. He turned the tablet toward me, showing a series of screenshots, text messages, between Jessica and someone named Brian. Look. Noah said, his finger pointing to one exchange. Brian, how much longer do we have to wait? Jessica. Doctor says the poison is working slower than expected. His kidneys are failing, but he's still hanging on. Brian, can't you increase the dose? Jessica. Too risky. His mother is already suspicious. Once she donates her kidney, we'll finish it. The doctors will think it's transplant rejection. Brian. And then we'll have the insurance money. Jessica. 2 million. Enough to start over somewhere new with Noah. Brian. Is the old lady really going through with the donation? Jessica. She thinks it's her obligation. What she doesn't know is she'll be saving him just long enough for us to finish the job. The world seemed to tilt beneath me. The surgeon took the tablet, reading the messages with growing horror. The anesthesiologist gasped. I felt as if I were floating outside my body watching this nightmare unfold. Get security and call the police. The surgeon ordered one of the nurses, and find the patient's husband immediately. Noah was sobbing uncontrollably now. I didn't know what to do. Mom kept making Daddy sicker, putting stuff in his food when he wasn't looking. I was scared to tell because she said if anything happened to her, I'd have to go live with strangers. I reached out for Noah, and the surgical team helped me sit up enough to hold him. You did the right thing, brave boy. I whispered, my mind reeling with horror and rage. You saved both your father and me. The operating room doors burst open as hospital security arrived, followed closely by Jessica, who had obviously been searching for Noah. What's going on, Noah? What are you doing? She demanded, trying to sound like a concerned mother. Then she saw the tablet in the surgeon's hands, and the color drained from her face. Mrs. Wilson, the surgeon said coldly, I suggest you wait right here. The police have been called. This is ridiculous, Jessica sputtered, backing toward the door. My son has an overactive imagination. He's been playing too many video games. These text messages seem quite real. The surgeon replied, continuing to scroll through what appeared to be months of incriminating conversations. And we'll be running toxicology tests on your husband immediately. Jessica lunged for the door, but security blocked her escape. You don't understand, she cried, her facade cracking. Daniel was going to leave me. He was talking to a divorce lawyer. What was I supposed to do? As they led Jessica away, I held Noah tighter, his small body trembling against mine. My almost sacrifice hadn't been an act of love at all. It had been part of a monstrous plan. And this child, this brave, observant child, had saved both his father and me from an unthinkable fate. The hours after Noah's revelation passed in a blur. The transplant was cancelled. And instead of waking up minus a kidney, I found myself in a small hospital room with Noah curled up asleep beside me. The police had come and gone, taking formal statements from both of us. They'd assured me that Jessica was in custody and her accomplice Brian had been arrested at his apartment. Daniel was in a secure room on another floor, undergoing emergency treatment. Once toxicology tests confirmed the presence of a slow-acting poison in his system. Ethylene glycol, commonly found in antifreeze, which had been causing his kidney failure. The doctors were hopeful that with the poisoning stopped and proper treatment, his kidneys might recover, at least partial function. When Noah woke up, his first question broke my heart. Is Daddy going to die? No, sweetheart, I assured him, smoothing his hair. The doctors are giving him medicine to make him better. You saved him. His bottom lip trembled. But I got Mom in trouble. I took a deep breath, searching for the right words. Your mom made very bad choices that were hurting your dad. You didn't cause this situation, she did. You were brave enough to tell the truth even though it was scary. Where will I live now? He asked, his voice small. With your dad when he gets better. And I'll be there to help both of you every step of the way. Later that day, I was allowed to see Daniel. The shock had nearly destroyed him. His wife of 8 years, the mother of his child, had been systematically poisoning him, planning to use my donated kidney as the final step in her murder plan. I knew things weren't good between us. He whispered, his voice hoarse. But this, how could she do this? How could I not know? I held his hand, my own shock and anger giving way to protective instinct. Manipulators are skilled at deception, Daniel. This isn't your fault. Noah, he said, suddenly eyes widening. Is he okay? He must be traumatized. He's shaken, but he's also relieved. I told him. He's been carrying this terrible secret, watching his mother hurt you, afraid to speak up. Daniel covered his face with his hands, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. My son saved my life. And yours. The detective assigned to our case visited later that day, explaining what they'd discovered so far. Jessica had been having an affair with her personal trainer Brian for over a year. When Daniel had mentioned consulting a divorce attorney, something he'd never actually told me, they'd hatched their plan. Jessica had been slowly poisoning Daniel's food and protein shakes with ethylene glycol, causing his kidney failure. We found significant evidence at your home, the detective explained gently. A supply of antifreeze hidden in the garage, Brian's DNA in your bedroom, and most damning, a journal where Jessica detailed the poisoning schedule and her frustration that it was taking longer than expected. And the life insurance, I asked, remembering the conversation I'd overheard. $2 million. She had convinced your son to increase his coverage last year, claiming it was for Noah's security. As the detective continued explaining the case against Jessica and Brian, I felt a strange mix of horror, rage, and profound gratitude that Noah had found the courage to expose the truth literally moments before it was too late. In the days that followed, I took emergency temporary guardianship of Noah, while Daniel remained hospitalized. We stayed in my small apartment, where I tried to create a sense of safety and routine. Noah had nightmares nearly every night, waking up crying for both his father and heartbreakingly sometimes for his mother too. I know Mom did a terrible thing, he told me one night after a particularly bad dream. But does that mean I have to hate her forever? No, sweetheart, I said, holding him close. You can be angry at what she did while still remembering the good times. Your feelings are complicated, and that's okay. Child Services arranged for Noah to see a therapist specializing in family trauma. Meanwhile, I coordinated with the police to retrieve essential items from their house, which was still considered a crime scene. Daniel improved steadily once the poisoning stopped. His kidneys had sustained significant damage, but the doctors were cautiously optimistic that with medication and care, he might avoid a transplant altogether. When he was strong enough to have longer visits with Noah, I witnessed both their pain and their healing as they clung to each other, survivors of an unimaginable betrayal. Mom, Daniel said one evening, when Noah had fallen asleep between us in the hospital room, I don't know how we'll ever get past this. One day at a time. I told him, the old nurse's standby that had seen me through many crises. We just have to be honest with Noah, get him the help he needs, and rebuild. Daniel reached across his sleeping son to squeeze my hand. You were literally on the operating table ready to give me your kidney. Even though it turned out differently than we expected, I'll never forget what you were willing to sacrifice. I looked down at Noah, this extraordinarily brave child who had saved us both. Family protects each other, I said simply. That's what Noah did, and what I was trying to do. That's what we'll keep doing. 3 months after that fateful day in the operating room, our lives had settled into a new pattern. Daniel had been discharged from the hospital, though he still needed regular dialysis. The good news was that his kidney function was slowly improving, and the doctors were cautiously optimistic that he might eventually recover enough to avoid a transplant entirely. Noah and Daniel had moved in with me temporarily. My small 2-bedroom apartment was cramped with 3 of us, but it was safe and filled with love. Noah had the second bedroom while Daniel slept on a pull-out couch in the living room. Every night, I thanked God for the miracle that had saved us, even as I struggled to comprehend the depth of Jessica's betrayal. Jessica remained in jail, awaiting trial, having been denied bail due to the severity of her alleged crimes and the risk of flight. The evidence against her was overwhelming. The text messages, the poison found in their home, her own journal detailing her frustration with how long the poison was taking to work, and eventually Brian's confession as he sought a plea deal. Noah visited a child psychologist twice a week, working through his trauma, guilt, and confusion. Some sessions I attended with him, others were just for him. The psychologist assured me that while Noah was dealing with significant trauma, children are remarkably resilient when surrounded by love and stability. He feels like a hero, she explained during one of our consultations. And in many ways he is. That gives him strength. But he also feels guilty for turning in his mother and confused about whether he's allowed to miss her sometimes. How do we help him with that? Daniel asked, his face haggard with worry for his son. By validating all his feelings, she replied. Let him know it's okay to miss the good parts of his relationship with his mother, even while understanding that what she did was terribly wrong. Daniel underwent his own therapy, trying to come to terms with the fact that the woman he had loved, the mother of his child, had systematically poisoned him for financial gain. There were days when his anger was all-consuming, others when depression left him barely able to get out of bed. But slowly, with professional help and Noah's unwavering love, he began to heal. I found myself in an unexpected role, not just mother and grandmother, but the foundation upon which my son and grandson were rebuilding their lives. It was exhausting and heartbreaking, but also filled with moments of profound connection and even occasional joy. Noah's first genuine laugh after the crisis, Daniel's first day returning to remote work, our first normal dinner, where no one cried, each felt like a precious milestone. One unexpected development was Jessica's parents reaching out to us. They were devastated by their daughter's actions and desperate to maintain a relationship with their grandson. My initial instinct was to protect Noah from any connection to Jessica's family, fearing they might have influenced her in some way. But the therapist encouraged us to consider allowing supervised visits if Noah wanted them. They're still his grandparents, she pointed out. Unless there's evidence they were involved or are unsafe, maintaining that relationship could be beneficial for Noah. After much discussion, we arranged a meeting in a neutral location. Janet and Robert Ellis arrived carrying only a small gift for Noah, a stuffed animal, not the extravagant presents they'd given in the past. They were subdued, their eyes red-rimmed from crying. We don't understand how Jessica could do this, Janet said, her voice breaking. We didn't raise her to be this person. We just want Noah to know we love him, Robert added, that none of this is his fault. Watching them interact with Noah, careful, gentle, clearly heartbroken but determined to support him, I realized they were victims of Jessica's deception too. We agreed to monthly visits, always supervised, with the understanding that they would never defend Jessica's actions to Noah or make him feel guilty for his role in exposing her crimes. Daniel also reconnected with old friends, people Jessica had gradually isolated him from over the years. It was painful to realize how systematically she had cut him off from his support network, making him more dependent on her. But it was healing to watch him rebuild these relationships, to see his surprise when old college buddies dropped everything to visit him in the hospital, when former co-workers organized a meal train during his recovery. During his dialysis sessions, Daniel struck up a friendship with Linda, one of the nurses. She was kind and professional, and I noticed how she went out of her way to make Daniel comfortable during treatments. I caught him smiling at something she said one day, a genuine smile that reached his eyes, the first I'd seen in months. It was far too soon for anything romantic, but the simple human connection seemed to lift his spirits. Throughout this period, I learned to balance supporting my family with caring for myself. There were nights I cried alone in my room, overwhelmed by all that had happened and all that still lay ahead. There were days I had to force myself to take a walk alone, to call an old friend, to remember that I couldn't help Daniel and Noah if I collapsed under the weight of it all. 6 months after the surgery that never happened, the three of us attended a support group for families affected by similar betrayals. There weren't many cases exactly like ours, but there were others who had experienced profound betrayal by family members. Hearing their stories, seeing how they had survived, and even eventually thrived, gave us all hope that we too would find our way forward. "You know what amazes me?" Daniel said as we drove home one evening. "How many people experience terrible things and still find reasons to be kind, to help others, to love again." From the back seat, Noah piped up, like grandma was going to give you her kidney even though she was scared. Daniel caught my eye in the rearview mirror. "Exactly like that, buddy." In that moment, despite everything we'd been through, I felt a profound sense of gratitude, not for Jessica's betrayal or the pain we'd endured, but for the truth that had saved us, for the bonds that had strengthened between us, and for the knowledge that even in our darkest moments, love, real love, had the power to save. 1 year after the day that changed everything, Daniel, Noah, and I gathered in my small apartment kitchen to celebrate what we now called our Truth Day. It wasn't exactly a celebration, more a recognition of how far we'd come and how much we had survived together. Daniel's health had improved dramatically once the poisoning stopped. His kidneys had regained enough function that dialysis was now only needed once a week, and his doctors were cautiously optimistic that eventually he might not need it at all. He'd lost weight during the worst of his illness, that he hadn't fully regained, but the grey pallor was gone from his skin, and energy had returned to his movements. 2 months earlier, Daniel and Noah had moved into their own apartment, just a few blocks from mine, close enough for daily visits but giving them space to rebuild their lives as a unit of two. Daniel had returned to full-time work, though now remotely allowing him to be home when Noah returned from school. Jessica had been sentenced to 25 years in prison for attempted murder, poisoning, and conspiracy. Brian had received 15 years as part of a plea deal. The trial had been difficult, with Noah having to testify via closed-circuit television. But the prosecutor had been gentle with him, and the judge had praised his bravery in her sentencing remarks. "This court recognizes that without the courage of a 9-year-old boy, we would likely be trying a murder case instead," she had said. Noah had just turned 10, and while the trauma had left its mark, he was gradually reclaiming the joy of childhood. He played soccer now, something Jessica had never allowed because it might dirty his clothes. He had friends over for video games and pizza. He still saw his therapist, though now only monthly, and he'd started keeping a journal where he processed his complicated feelings about his mother. "I'm still mad at her," he told me once, "but I decided I don't have to think about her every day anymore. Dad says that's healthy." As we sat at the kitchen table with a homemade cake between us, Noah had insisted on helping bake it, his small hands covered in flour. I looked at my son and grandson with a sense of wonder at their resilience. "I have something for both of you," Noah announced, suddenly shy. He disappeared into the bedroom and returned with 2 carefully wrapped packages. Daniel opened his first, a framed drawing of himself and Noah, playing catch in the park, something they'd started doing every Saturday. "This is beautiful, buddy," he said, his voice thick with emotion. My package contained a similar drawing, but this one showed the three of us, Daniel, Noah, and me, holding hands. Across the top, in careful letters, Noah had written, "My heroes." "Noah, this is the most precious gift I've ever received," I told him, blinking back tears. "My art teacher helped me with the frames," he explained, "but I did the drawings all by myself." He hesitated, then added, "I wanted to make something to say thank you for not giving up even when everything was really bad." Daniel pulled his son into a hug. "We never would have made it without you, Noah. You know that, right? You saved both Grandma and me." Noah's face flushed with pride, though I could see the shadow of old pain in his eyes. "I was really scared," he admitted. "But I remembered what Grandma always says about telling the truth even when it's hard." Later, after Noah had gone to bed, Daniel and I sat on the small balcony of his apartment, looking out at the city lights. "I've been thinking about what we learned from all this," he said quietly, "about love and obligation." I waited, giving him space to continue. "Jessica used that word obligation like a weapon against you. It's your obligation as his mother," he quoted bitterly. "But what you were willing to do, that wasn't about obligation at all, was it?" "No," I agreed. "It was about love." "And what Noah did, exposing his own mother to save us, that wasn't obligation either. That was love too. Real love." I thought about Jessica's cold calculation, her use of family ties as manipulation tools, and contrasted it with Noah's terrified bravery as he burst into that operating room determined to save his grandmother and father, no matter the personal cost. "I think the difference," I said slowly, "is that real love protects, while obligation just demands. Jessica demanded your loyalty. My kidney, Noah's silence, all without giving anything in return. But love gives freely even when it's difficult or painful." Daniel nodded. "I'm trying to teach Noah that family isn't about what you're obligated to do or endure. It's about choosing to love and protect each other, even when it's hard." "You're doing a wonderful job with him," I told my son, reaching out to squeeze his hand. "Better than you know." He smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "I have good help, and speaking of that, I wanted to tell you that Linda from the dialysis center asked if I might want to get coffee sometime." "And do you?" I asked, careful to keep my tone neutral. He was quiet for a moment. "I think so. It's been a year, and the therapist says it might be good for me to start reclaiming some normalcy. Linda knows everything. She's seen me at my worst, and she still seems to like me." "She'd be lucky to have you," I said simply. "And Noah seems to like her." "He does," Daniel agreed, though he made me promise there would be absolutely no kissing if she comes over. He laughed, a sound that had once been rare but was becoming more frequent. Small steps. As I walked home that night, I reflected on the strange, painful journey we'd been on. I had nearly given my kidney in what would have been not an act of love, but an unwitting participation in my own son's murder. Yet from that horror had come a deeper understanding of what family truly meant. True love isn't about obligation, as Jessica tried to use against me. It's about protection. Sometimes the greatest act of love isn't offering your kidney. It's having the courage to see the truth even when it breaks your heart. My grandson taught me that love means protecting each other, even from the people we thought we could trust. In the end, our family wasn't broken by betrayal. It was rebuilt by truth. If you're facing impossible family choices right now, remember that doing the right thing may not always be what's expected of you. Listen to that quiet voice of truth, even when it comes from unexpected places. Sometimes the smallest among us can be the bravest of all. I'd love to hear in the comments if you've ever had to make a difficult choice to protect someone you love. Please like this video. If Noah's bravery touched your heart, subscribe to hear more stories of family healing, and share this with someone who might need to be reminded that real love protects, not demands. Thank you for listening, And may you always find the courage to choose truth even when it's the hardest path.